Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus and I welcome you to Living Theurgy. Today we have in our panel the one, the only, the legendary Apollonius. And we have Jean-Louis de Biasi, who needs no introduction. And last but not least, we have Tony Mierzwicki, our expert in very many things, a fine scholar and very prolific in his writings. Today, we're going to explore what theurgy means to us and how it relates to religion. And we will start with Apollonius, who has the best resources online for decades and who is a top scholar in our community.
So did you want a little update first or launch right into the topic?
No, you give us an update first. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay,
so I think with Tony, I did WitchCon earlier this month. I taught a course on doing ancient Greek divination with the Alphabet Oracle and the Astragalus Oracle. The other thing maybe worth reporting recently is that, you know, I did this translation of the Tablet of Thebes. I also have since then done a commentary on it. It's longer actually than the original translation, and I've got that published now too. And I did something kind of a new experiment with that, because I had the original tablet was illustrated with pictures I had colored from Hans Holbein the Younger. But the commentary, I've used all AI-generated art, which I generated to try and produce more contemporary, but still antique-looking images of the various deities and spirits and beings and people that appear in the Tablet of Thebes. And so it's quite nice. I think it's all various sort of color pictures and sort of a pre-Raphaelite kind of style, and so it's you know, it's a quite nice picture book, I think. So it's good for contemplation and study. So that's been most of my activity this past month. So I'm looking forward to later maybe doing something at Mystic South.
That sounds incredible. That is awesome.
It was even with the help of the artificial intelligence, it was quite a bit of work, because it's very interesting, and this is maybe a topic for another session. But using this generative AI has a lot in common with theurgy. You know, you have to get the invocation right, and often you don't get what you want. Most of the time, you don't get what you want. You get something like what you want, and sometimes you get some really, really kind of bizarre stuff too. So it's an interesting the way it works. I felt in some ways quite at home working with this kind of deep unconscious of the internet. So that's, in terms of updates, that's kind of all that's been going on with me lately.
That's all that's going on. It's an amazing amount that's going on with you.
Keeps me busy.
And I guess we'll do the update with everybody, and then we'll come back for the topic. Jean-Louis de Biasi, you are always busy also. Anything new and exciting to report?
Sure, but first a question. You are talking about AI and what you created with that. What website did you use for that? Because there are several. I tried several. They are not all the perfect. Far from that.
Right. I used a number of different ones. I can send you a list. I tried probably half a dozen overall, but most of the images that I kept were from Deep Dream Generator and Starry AI, and I got some from Night Cafe.
Okay.
These are all various interfaces to some of the same generators, but they can produce quite different results, and it definitely, there's I think of it a lot like photography. You know, anyone can point a camera at something and take a picture, but to take good pictures takes some skill. You have to learn how to use the instrument. And I think these definitely are like that way. You have to learn how to come up with an appropriate prompt. You have to maybe adjust some of the parameters for the programs. Sometimes you can use a seed image, although I didn't actually, that didn't work for me very much. And then there's a lot of just, I remember somebody asked Ansel Adams, how did he take such good pictures? And he says, take lots of them and throw away the bad ones. And I did a lot of that. I have dozens of images that I threw away for every one that I kept. But sometimes I got multiple good ones, and it was kind of a hard decision to say which one. But I think the Deep Dream Generator and Starry AI were what I generally had the least trouble with getting a decent image from.
Okay, I'm interested to receive the links if you can send that.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, because I don't recall which one I used. I tried maybe 5 or 6. One was okay, but as you said, this is a kind of theurgic work, theurgic manifestation on the web. And this is good to work on that, because for visualizations, for anything, this is a great technique. So I am interested, yes, for several things. Yes, I have been busy in the past weeks with the release of the book, Mysteries of the Aura. So I had already 2 interviews, one 30 minutes that has been released. Maybe I shared it, not yet, I will. And another one was 1 hour interview. And I have 2, 3 planned plus Tony and Hercules. So busy doing this interview, in the same time building the opportunity for some people to offer aura readings, but a very small number of people, because I am busy to do something else. So I cannot do that like full time, it could be crazy. So just few of them, because people ask about it. And beside that, and beside the book we are working on and other projects, as I am the Grandmaster, and you know that, of the Olympus, yes, and the structure of Mediterranean yoga, we just reopened a new edition, I can say that, a new edition, a new presentation of the pronouns of the Olympus in English. This is the same structure, the same goal, but not exactly the same way to practice. Because previously we were focusing on rituals, just rituals. But the principle we use in Theurgy is to say that the most effective ritual you can perform starts with a ritual in your mind, in your inner world, in yourself. So we increased the guided meditations, the visualization part, and the material ritual occurs at the end of the process as a result of what you already did within you. So this is quite different. I shared the link, the direct link to the page, like that you can check what it is and share after. Then we will translate that, these new pronouns in French, Portuguese, and Spanish. Usually this is the way we start in English, then French, then Portuguese, and after in Spanish. And to end on that, I sent to a few of them, proposal, we talked about that, to translate in French some of your books. And we will do that with Theurgy Publications. And we will send the agreement and so on, and start the translations maybe in April or May, in order to have at least one of each book available in French first during this year, because we do not need to have, we are not a big company, so that means we can go faster than Lorin to translate, to publish, and so on. So this is what I did in the past weeks, and there is a lot to do, because we plan already meetings and initiations offering in Nevada, in Texas in July, in May in France and Italy. So the order will offer these initiations. So in 2 locations, June, Nevada, July, Dallas, and May, France and Italy, and September maybe in France. So the organization takes some time, but this is exciting because there is a kind of energy going on, and we want to, as you talked about AI, to bring a connection between modern science, modern ways to express our tradition with our roots. And this connection is essential. This is perfect. I love to imagine things like that, how we can connect the most traditional knowledge to the newest technology. If we can do that, we will win, I am sure. And that's it for me.
That's it, huh? That is awesome, Jean-Louis. I have a quick question to ask you. My activities have brought me into Masonic circles, and I've been thinking of starting a show on esoteric Freemasonry. So you've written books on that, and I know that our other guests are knowledgeable about it. So I will probably be launching a podcast in the next quarter. So,
I am very, very active in Freemasonry. In the past, this month in Nevada, I gave 3 lectures in lodges. One was yesterday, 2 others were the week before. And the past month, I gave 2 online with a huge worldwide Masonic community. So I am with the writings and with the work as a Mason. Yes, I am very involved and very active. Yeah.
So when that comes closer to being manifest, I will definitely be contacting you. Definitely want to interview you about your books and your experiences, and to launch that on the right foot. And you're also active in the Rosicrucian tradition, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Cross. I am the head of this tradition. And the same, we have initiations and online trainings, and we just reopened one in English these past days. But I was not talking about it because this is not exactly theurgy. This is Kabbalistic magic or something like that. So yes, there are a lot that is related to it because there are some parts of the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Cross that is really theurgic in the way we do that and we think about it. But this is mixed with Hebrew Kabbalah. So this is not fully pagan.
Unless you accept the premise that the Kabbalah was Grecian. There was a book written about that.
That's true. I wrote a book about it, but this is, in any way, mostly people are talking about Hebrew Kabbalah.
And because my activities, again, have brought me into Rosicrucian circles as well, and I have initiates involved in my various doings. So I want to explore and make my journey public, and then be able to create paths to the things that you are doing, so that people who want to pursue it further have a place to go.
I love just to remind to anyone that the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Cross in the modern manifestation has been the first one to initiate, to be public in 1888. Every other Rose Cross organizations came later, like 50 years after or something like that. So 1888, it was really the first opening in south of France of the Rose Cross tradition. I am not talking about the German Rose Cross that was much earlier, but the modern manifestations, it was the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Cross, starting South France, then Paris, and after that, today, me.
Awesome, and it expands the umbrella of things we cover, from the Phoenicians and their mystic doings all the way to what is happening today, and that is awesome. Thank you. We will speak.
Thank you.
And Tony Mierzwicki, last but not least, you were recently speaking with Apollonius at WitchCon.
Yes, I gave a talk on necromancy in the ancient world. It's a talk that I've given a number of times over the years. Difference was that I had to put together a PowerPoint for it. Ran out of time, had too much material to cover, had a couple of technical issues, but otherwise it went well. A couple of days ago, I was contacted by the organizer of Witches Fest in New York City. She wants me to come and speak at her event again. Awesome. I assume you'll be coming to that as well?
Yes, I'll be speaking there as well. I'm still working on my choice of topic, but I will be speaking at Witches Fest.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work out what I'm going to talk about as well. So I'll be thinking about that over the next couple of days. I have an interview coming up with Doug Blake about his Egyptian tarot deck. I've already started peeking into Jean-Louis' exciting aura book. It looks really, really good. There's stuff there about diet that I hadn't thought of before, about ethical meat eating. I've only just started dipping into it, but it's quite an amazing book. And the other thing I wanted to point out was you guys were briefly talking about the Greek Kabbalah. There was a guy called Kieran Barry who wrote a book actually called The Greek Kabbalah. Yes. He's an OTO initiate, and he maintains that everything in the Hebrew Kabbalah comes from Greek sources. And that's not that much of a stretch. I mean, even the Hebrew encyclopedia, the Jewish encyclopedia, admits that the tree of life originally came from the Brotherhood of Basra, but it only had 8 Sephiroth. So the Hebrews expanded it to 10 Sephiroth, so it takes on the form that we have now. But so that's pretty well what I'm doing at the moment. Not as exciting as some of the other guys, but you know, I'm plodding along.
But you're also writing regularly for that blog that you publish on. So you're always busy there, and you're always interviewing the authors of the material that you cover in the blogs, or the people involved with whatever you're talking about. So you remain very active as well.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy getting to meet the authors. They're people who I admire from a distance. I look at the stuff that they're writing, and to actually talk to them is quite a blessing. So, yeah, Jo Graham was absolutely amazing with all her. That was my last interview, with all the work that she's done for Stargate Atlantis. So it was a real privilege to actually be able to reach out and get to know her a little bit in the context of an interview.
Yeah, Jo will be back. I'm interviewing about the same book that you interviewed her on, and some of her other work. I'm a Stargate fan. An entire bookshelf I have that's filled with Stargate material, both speculative entertainment related to the TV show and so forth.
I actually just received a couple of her books a couple of days ago. She's written about time cycles, all based on Etruscan spirituality. So I got both books that she wrote. I think one was in 2020, one was in 2021, something like that, you know, at the beginning of COVID. So I'm looking forward to going through those, reviewing them, and doing another interview with her. It'd be nice to sort of get more information out there about the Etruscans. Not many people are familiar with them. So, you know, whatever we can get out there is a good thing.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to end with I'm a Lemnian Greek. We're related to the Etruscans and the people in Tuscany, and also the Trojans. And there are a lot of artifacts on Lemnos, some of them quite spectacular, that, you know, demonstrate the non-Greek nature of the Lemnians at some points in history.
I seem to remember that the Romans thought of themselves as being descended from the Trojans.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for updating us. Lots of exciting things. And now we'll address our topic. If we each restrict ourselves to 15 minutes or so, we should be done, 10 to 15 minutes, we should be done by 10:15. Does anyone need to leave before then? I'll have you go first. No? Okay. I pass the baton to Apollonius. And
well, thank you. Yeah, so on this question of, it's interesting, this question of theurgy versus religion. And because of the way I've come at it basically from the Greek tradition, specifically from the Neoplatonic tradition, which is, of course, where the word theurgy, theurgia, comes from. The two Julians, Julian the Chaldean and Julian the Theurgist. So as far as we know, they were the first ones to refer to this as theurgy. Certainly the practice long predates them. And, we can argue how far back it goes, but certainly into probably to Egyptian temple practice and other sort of more shamanic type practices that the Greeks also picked up in the Mid-East and Central Asia. So from my perspective, theurgy has always been this practice that we especially find in the Neoplatonists for interacting with deities, gods, daimons, other sorts of beings. And so in that sense, it's very much connected with religion in the broad sense. And because it's contacting deities, it's God work as opposed to theology, which is God talk. And it's connected with divination, which again is communication with the gods. And again, like I said, with temple practices too, the animation of the statues, of the sacred statues in the temples and things like that. When I first started writing about theurgy, it was strictly, I used it strictly in the narrow sense of a practice within Neoplatonic philosophy, although I saw parallels in many different spiritual traditions and religious traditions, and magical traditions too, of course, and so I pointed those out. But over the, I don't know how many years ago that was, more than a few decades, I've noticed that the term theurgy has just become much more popular. Lots of people are talking about theurgy now. And in fact, it's become much more of a general term for that kind of practice in any tradition. Whether it's Norse theurgy or Egyptian theurgy or Tibetan theurgy or what have you. And just in the same kind of way that shamanism kind of got generalized from a very specific Siberian cultural practice to, shamanism more widely considered. I think the same has happened to theurgy. But in my mind, it's because of the term, if nothing else, it's still pretty much inherently connected with gods, with deities and daimons as lesser deities. And so I would tend to keep its use restricted to that sense. Or I also sometimes define theurgy as sacred magic. So it's magic that has to do specifically with deities, with sacred concerns, whereas magic in general might be that, but it might not. Also, it might be just strictly magical and not especially involve any particular deities. So I guess that's kind of my take on it is, I like to keep theurgy a little bit narrower than magic in general, but broader than just strictly Neoplatonic or Hellenic theurgy to incorporate similar practices that we find in many different spiritual and religious traditions.
Thank you very much. And lots to digest there. I also see, as you've seen, that theurgy is becoming a term that a lot of people are using. And Brandy spearheaded the conversation about theurgy with witchcraft practitioners. Mm-hmm. And I started interviewing the cosmic spiritualities or the UFO spiritualities and trying to get a sense of what they're doing and then what of it is theurgic. And those conversations are coming in the months ahead. So if anybody else here wants to spearhead a conversation with a group of people, just talk to me and we'll make it happen. Thank you, Apollonius. Jean-Louis.
Yeah, this is a really complex question. This is fascinating, very interesting, very important, but I feel that very challenging to answer. And for me, this is really challenging because I am managing an initiatory order rooted on theurgy. So I am not just practicing that as an individual, but I am not preaching, but explaining that to people coming from different cultures. So this is really complicated and different. And the first thing, and this is my view, I am not talking about, and Apollonius was saying that, and this is really important and perfect. I'm trying to find how a modern theurgic initiatory order can teach what is theurgy, avoiding all the delusions that can be linked to that. This is the real challenge. Because most of the time what I can see is the confusion between the communication with gods and goddesses and a delusional life in which I pretend to talk with gods and goddesses are talking with me. And how you can teach to someone the difference between this delusion or reality. This is really complicated. In our practice, doesn't matter if you are delusional or not. If you are happy in life, that's fine. Doesn't matter if you fantasize, if you visualize, if this is true or not. But if you try to communicate this science to someone else, you have a kind of responsibility. And the first thing is for me always to say that modern theurgy or theurgy is not based on faith. This is based on experience, experiment. So you can give, if you have a good and effective ritual, you can give this ritual to someone. You can mentor this student, and based on that, you can help him to do the same experiment, and as a result, to have this contact with a deity, no matter which one. But what I found is that initiation in a tradition is a kind of safeguard for everything if the tradition is well managed. That means if you do not pretend to do more than you do, you can achieve great things. And I guess that in the past, philosophers, Neoplatonic philosophers, or the original ancient masters, philosophers and theurgists, were also, and we can find that in their books, humble people. They know what they do, and they don't want to speak too much about what they do. Not because just about secrets, but just because they know how many things they don't know already. They are sure about what they do, but they know that this is a very challenging experience, very fragile experience. And we are really on the edge of a razor, on the edge between delusion and reality. And we are always like in a challenging mental health condition. This is a proper status of a theurgist. So first thing, this is based on experience, humility, and not faith. Faith is not rejected, but in this case, the faith is just something that can help you when everything is going wrong. Maybe this is more trust than a faith in a religious way. I have no issue with people who believe in gods and are doing rituals, circles, doesn't matter if this is in Wicca or everywhere. But saying that they do theurgy I really doubt that. They are just doing a different kind of religion. That's it. There is no philosophy on it. There is almost none, not real philosophy in a classical sense. So there is really for theurgy today this kind of association between being a philosopher and being a scientist. And this connection between both, yes, you are always someone who is religious. Every theurgist is fundamentally a religious person without being religious. And this is really a paradox, because you are doing a religious or spiritual path, but in the same time, you know that this is not a religion. This is not a dogma. This is an experiment everyone should do at any time. And you can challenge yourself anytime, and you should, because this is so fragile. And in the same time, and I will end with that, I compared with religion, but it's the same for magic. We are not magicians. We are something else. We are not working horizontally. We are working vertically. We are working with the gods and goddesses, but in the same time, we are aiming to control the last moment when we will die, to not lose our awareness, nor our consciousness, and be still aware after our death and continue our destiny. So to be able to do that, we need a huge, strong training. Communication with gods and goddesses is a part of it. Divination, as you said previously, is important too for the communication. But at the end, we don't know if the gods or goddesses will be there. The only thing we know that our focus, our inner work through the tools of theurgy should give us all is needed to stay alive after death. Because this, when I say stay alive, I mean stay aware of who we are and continue our destiny without losing our memory. And this is one of the main challenges for us for theurgy, reaching this real essential point at the end of the life. So yes, it can help to do a lot of things during life, communication with gods and goddesses, but at the end, if you do the real initiation, what will happen? What are the tools we have to need? We are not the golden dawn with a lot of things. When they will die, they will be naked anyway, and they will have almost nothing, even if they have a huge, beautiful followers and a lot of temples. Yes, but at the end, you have just the theurgic work you did during your life and what you can bring with your soul. That's it, nothing more. So this is the epicenter of the theurgy path. So is it religious? I don't think so. The faith is not enough. Is it a training and a real experience during years and years? I think so. And in this case, this is the way I see the difference between religion. I can believe and I will be saved. Yes, but maybe I am not convinced by the hell and heaven they are offering. I prefer mine as a theurgist. Mm-hmm. So if I want to go where I want to go, I have to work all my life for that with practices, and most of the time inner practices, and then second, outer practices, rituals, and so on. But if I do not start with the inner practices, it doesn't work, really. So this is this challenge. Faith is good for people who don't do theurgy. For us, we chose philosophy, experimentation, knowing yourself, and challenging yourself all the time. So this is not an easy path. This is not for everyone. If everyone wants to be a pagan, welcome. This is a large world and a beautiful world. But if they want to be theurgists, this is so different. But this is the only option to survive after our death. So let's go to work.
Very well said and very powerfully said, and a lot there, very meaty and thick. So it's going to take a long time to chew on it and digest it, Jean-Louis. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tony Mierzwicki.
I just wanted to say that I thought that when Jean-Louis contrasted faith with experience, he absolutely nailed the distinction between religion and theurgy. So there's far more information on contrasting religion with spirituality. So I was going to start off talking about that and then narrow the focus of spirituality down to theurgy. So I wanted to start off by quoting Deepak Chopra. This is a quote that comes up on social media all the time. And he said that religion is belief in someone else's experience, while spirituality is having your own experience. And there's a lot of truth in that, and I wanted to unpack it. So over the last few thousand years, much of humanity has sought ultimate answers to the ultimate questions. And these questions deal with the meaning of life, who we really are, and what our purpose is. Religions are based on the spiritual experiences of their extraordinary charismatic founders who are highly evolved beings, or possibly archetypes, if no historical personage can be identified with certainty. These founders provide answers to those questions, and then religions form around those answers and serve to unite groups of people under a set of values, principles, beliefs, and practices which are claimed to be in keeping with the will of a higher power or a deity. And this, of course, involves the service and worship of that deity. Many religions often seek to control their adherents. So they'll say that truth is what their scriptures say, and their adherents must believe it. And if the scriptures aren't clear, then their adherents are supposed to believe the interpretation of their priests or equivalent representatives. These religions set themselves up as intermediaries between their adherents and the divine. So that's a control mechanism. They don't want people directly relating with deity. This is many religions. It's not true of things like Buddhism and Hinduism, where people are actually encouraged to dabble in spirituality, but it's certainly true in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism much of the time. Spirituality, on the other hand, involves connecting with something beyond the physical and living life in a reverent and sacred manner. To quote Christina Puchalski, spirituality is the aspect of humanity that refers to the way individuals seek and express meaning and purpose, and the way they experience their connectedness to the moment, to self, to others, to nature, and to the significant or the sacred. While some may disagree, I actually see theurgy as occupying a narrow portion of spiritual experience, as it focuses on fostering a connection with deities. So we're not just talking about anything beyond us like nature, spirits, ghosts, or what have you, but we're limiting ourselves to deity. So those practicing spirituality and theurgy eventually have their own experiences rather than depending on faith, which is what Jean-Louis was talking about, which allow them to navigate through life in an ethical fashion, knowing that they are making choices in keeping with the will of the deity of their choice. While many, but not all, religions seek to control and disempower their adherents, the practice of theurgy and spirituality seeks to do just the opposite, namely foster a direct connection with a higher power to enable people to live their best lives without being controlled by others. So, I mean, that to me is the difference between theurgy and religion. The idea of being empowered, having direct connection with deity, and not having someone dictate the way I should be living my life.
Thank you, Tony. That a lot. Everybody gave so much to chew on, to think about, and to digest. I'm in agreement with everything that everybody here said. I guess I'm the least scholarly and the least initiatic or And I really don't have the credentials of any of you, but I've been practicing theurgy, although initially I didn't call it theurgy. I learned the term in grammar school. But from as far back as I can remember, I had a resonance with Hercules and Herculean type of figures. So I wanted to be more like them. I didn't want to lose myself in them. So what I did and what I do is not really worship. I'm not trying to win the favor of a deity. It's just, here's my resonance. I've come to the conclusion through my experiences that I'm divine, but so is everything else. And that thought usually comes to you when you realize you're one with the universe. You realize that everything is one with the universe. So it doesn't make you better than anybody else to realize that or to operate from there. So for a long time in my life, I played hide and seek with my archetype. I studied my archetype in different cultures and pursued different cultural paths to see what they would teach me. And then I got to a point where I could recognize this archetype wherever it is. Like, I know that all the archetypes are in us, and I've experimented with that as well. But I always, whatever journey I take, I always wind up back with the same with the Herculean archetype. As far back as Melkart and even further into some speculative statues, it's the same energy. It's like behind the cultural mask, I keep encountering the same deity. So I stopped looking after a while because, okay, I get it. And it's not pretending or worshiping or talking to, it's a way of living. In Greek, we have an expression called en ονόματι Θεού, which means in the name of the deity. And my birth name and my name day and things like that fall really neatly into the Herculean story as well. And eventually I changed my name legally because people were calling me Hercules for much of my life, and now I made it official. So that's my one and only name. So again, I do dress up like an ancient Greek or a mythical Greek from this peplum and lead parades and open up stores locally, but I'm not dressing up or pretending to be anything. You know, I would wear things like that anyway, because that's who I am. And it is just a way of approaching life. I'm not trying to lose myself, as I said before, in the deity and not exist. I believe I'm very important to me and to the people around me and to my world. So it's basically like being plugged into something, and it's you. You know, my life is my prayer. My life is my sacrifice. You know, so I don't really do any rituals. I talk to the universe a lot, and sometimes the universe answers through synchronicities. But again, I believe anybody can talk to the universe and anybody can get synchronicities. So it doesn't necessarily, make me more than anybody or anything else. And I believe the ancients, by equating the gods with not only people, but statues and plants and things like that, tried to demonstrate that, yes, we're all gods, but we're the gods here. The way I can best express it is we're the dreams of the gods. We're aspects of the gods, and we're in this world. So we're the gods here, acting through their stories, their mythologies, and hopefully resolving these patterns, some of which are quite dysfunctional, that the gods are involved with, and trying to helping them transcend their story. And I personally believe, and I might change my mind if somebody gives me a better perspective, but at this point in my life, I believe that we're the gods. We're here in a dream of sorts, and we're here to resolve these stories and come up with better outcomes or better ways of living the story than the ones that have persisted since the dawn of humanity in our tales and stories, and still play out in movies and comic books and in our imagination. So anyway, that's my theurgy. I feel very privileged and honored that I can speak with all of you once a month, because each of you, has delved into this in their own unique way and has gone very, very deep. So I learn a lot from listening to everybody speak and reading the words they write. So to me, this is a time of the month that I really look forward to, and it's a special treat. And I like that our conversation is public, because I'm sure there are many other people out there who might not think of or want to or believe in doing a podcast, but we've had this podcast going for over half a decade already, and it doesn't seem like it's winding down, and we're expanding at this point, and doing things a new way and inviting new people. So it will grow. So like it or not, we are part of the theurgic experiment going forward, and I feel in a very significant way.
Hercules, I'd
Yes.
like to disagree with part of what you said,
That's
but
fine.
in the nicest way possible. I mean, at the very beginning, you were saying that it was important to be scholarly or academic. I actually don't believe that that's true. Theurgy is all about establishing a connection with the divine. You know, I've read about little old ladies in Greece, to borrow the Russian term, babushkas, going off and venerating the nymphs, and through a lifetime of practice, they're going to have a very strong connection with them.
Yes.
They may not be academic, but they're probably way more spiritual than any of us are. So I think you can't overestimate being academic or scholarly, because it's all about forging a connection with the divine. You're doing that. The little old ladies in Greek villages are doing that as well. We're all trying to do it. We're all on the same level. So don't put yourself down.
I'm not putting myself down. It's just my path.
It came across as that way.
I apologize for that, but it's just my path unfolded differently. So it's a treat to speak with people whose paths unfolded differently than mine, because I get perspectives and insights that I could not have gotten by doing what I did. So that's what I'm grateful for. I apologize for making it seem like I was putting myself down. I'm not.
In that case, I apologize for disagreeing with you.
There you go.
And we're still friends.
If I can jump in here,
Yes,
there's actually some interesting stuff about this in the Tablet of Kebes, because in the initiatory path that the seeker goes through in that text, he has to pass through a region called pseudo-education to come to true education, which is where he becomes enlightened, so to speak, and achieves true happiness. And so there's actually a fairly long discussion about, well, do you have to go through pseudo-education, and how long do you have to spend there? So it's, you know, what Tony was talking about is really what would be called pseudo-education. It's all sorts of stuff that's interesting, useful, perhaps, in terms of you know, earning a living and things like that. But it won't directly get you to that true happiness, eudaimonia. You know, that I said it the old way. But he says, you know, make a stop there and gather some stuff to carry you on the way, provisions essentially, but don't tarry there too long. Because he says, you know, you can look at all of the people hanging around there, and he's referring to scholars, you know, people like me, you know, that are kind of, you know, they're not any better people, but they think they're better. And they're all, you know, wasting their time on whatever their specialty is, and they're not getting to true education and to happiness, or flourishing, joy. And he says somebody that isn't so educated actually might be less distracted and get to the goal more quickly than somebody that's all tied up in their advanced education or their specialized skills and things like that useful though they may be in some respects, don't get you to that ultimate goal. And so it's interesting that and you know, this is a text that's, I don't know, 1700 years old or something like
Wow.
that you know, is still very much, it was an interesting debate about, well, this, and in fact, the seeker, I'll call him, says, well, are you saying all of this pseudo education is useless? And he said, no, it's not useless, you know, but it can be an impediment, you know, and so you have to be very savvy about taking what's important, both to get along, but then also to get to your ultimate goal. And I think that was, you know, it's wise, you know, as it should be coming from the sage. It's supposed to be coming from but it's wise advice in terms of this. And the babushkas that Tony was talking about, yeah, they didn't spend any time at all, perhaps, in pseudo education, and they got straight to the true education, which they learned on their own, from their elders, who knows what, but more from the culture than from formal education.
Thank you very much. And when I went to Greece one time and I was in Crete, I was climbing the steepest thing I've ever climbed. And I wouldn't do this again now at my age, but I was much younger. It was a mountain, and there was supposed to be a cave on the mountain where you went inside and your worthiness could be determined if you put your hand somewhere above this clay thing. And so anyway, I wanted to do that. And I got up the mountain. There were like mountain goats, like climbing the side of this steep thing. And getting up on the top was like a leap of faith, because all you could see on one side was a big drop. So anyway, I got up, and as I was getting up a little further down, a little old lady was climbing down this thing. So there was her faith,
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I got in there and went down the cave and found the thing, the water came to my hand. But again, I figured the water would come to anybody's hand if they climbed up here. But it was the journey that counted. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And we're actually a few minutes till the end of our conversation today. And let's start by sharing our contact information with Apollonius, again, going clockwise.
Yes. So my website is opsopaeus.com. That's opsopaeus.com. And I forgot to mention, if you go to the resources for Plethon's neo-pagan religion, I've got all new AI-generated images of
awesome.
deities that he outlines, the Neoplatonic deities. So, yeah.
And what the website for this one?
Excuse me?
What the website for this one, the address?
Well, it's on the opsopaeus.com website, but if you look under the resources page, and on the resources page, it has resources for Plethon's philosophy, and then if you go to that page, it has images of the gods, new images of the gods, and so that's where they are. Or I can, I'll send you the link.
And as you pointed out, it's a topic of another show, and I'm looking forward to the show with AI and Theurgy, because AI is growing and it's becoming more self-aware, it seems, and I really want to delve into that with you.
Great.
Jean-Louis?
Yes, the website is my name, debiasi.org, and I was speaking again about the Aurum Solis, and the website is aurumsolis.org, or Mediterranean Yoga, which is the same website.
Thank you very much. And Tony Mierzwicki?
Easiest way to contact me is through Facebook, either my personal page or my author page. And I also have a blog which I write for Patheos, which Hercules kindly mentioned earlier on in the episode, called Holistic Spirituality.
And it is a wonderful blog, and I read your writings and I post them on my page. So thank you.
And I'm very, very appreciative for everything you do for us.
My pleasure and my honor. And thank you to our audience. Today we have one person present as we're recording the show, but I know people listen to this later on. So until next time, this is us wishing you joyous journeys and amazing adventures. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.